Hey friends, welcome to my very first YouTube video. I'm so excited to have you guys here, and we gonna dig right into it. This video, I'll be sharing my testimony. That's right, my testimony. So y'all, shout out to God and shout out to Transformation Church, because without them, this video probably wouldn't have happened. And here's why. Y'all, I've been wanting to start a YouTube channel for the longest. When I say the longest, I mean the very longest. But it just wasn't the right time, so I just put it off for a very long time. Until recently, I joined a B group, and it was one of my friends. So I know y'all watching. Shout out to y'all. Ow. So I joined the B group, and when I joined, I did not have a clue what the B group was called. Did not have a clue of what the semester was going to be looking like. But I went. Unintentionally went, honey. And so the Holy Spirit definitely was all up and through there. He definitely had his hands in it. And y'all, I literally got into B group, and the very thing that God know I love the most is community. And you guys hear why I love through my testimony. But literally, I got into B group. The name of the B group was Sustained in Community. First off, hold on, wait a minute, Holy Spirit. Okay, I'm listening. And then at the end of B group, someone shared their testimony, and we were talking about just basically being delivered or just overcoming a lot of things through your testimony. And our B group leader, Candace, was like, everybody gonna share their testimony. And I'm like, Holy Spirit, come on now. Holy Spirit, really? Me? Y'all, he told me I was gonna tell my testimony. But I was like, Lord, I don't know how. I don't know what. But he was like, I got you. Stay plugged in, stay connected, and I got you. But trust the process. His exact words. And so here we are. Into it, ready to go. And y'all are on the ride with me. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Transformation Church. Thank you to my B group, my fam. I love you guys. And let's get into it. Peace. Shout out to all the girls out there doing it scared. I see you, sis. And I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm over here rooting you on, and you don't even know me. So a disclaimer. I'm going to be looking down at my phone, guys. Don't worry, don't fret. I'm literally looking at my notes just because it's very lengthy. It's very long. I had to write this thing out first. So I'll be looking down at my phone. But y'all, we good. We good. All right. Just had to let y'all know. Let's get into it. So I was born March 31st in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Ow. I really had the odds stacked against me at birth. I was born to a drug addicted mother, an absent father, but God saw through that. I am the middle child of 7 from my biological mother, and I believe I'm the baby of my biological father. I'm really not sure. So my mother birthed 7 children, and my father, I believe, had 12, but could be more. I'm not really sure. I'm not going to talk about my dad too much because I really don't know him. From what I understand, my mother and my father were together, and they had 3 children together, which is myself and my 2 older siblings, boy and a girl. So they had 2 girls and 1 boy together. Let's see, when I was about 1 or 2, my biological mother boarded a Greyhound, headed to Memphis, in which that is where I grew up, in Memphis, Tennessee. So that's pretty much how I got from Kenosha, born there, but I was raised in Memphis. So my mother, around the age of 1 or 2, she boarded a bus and never looked back, to be honest. She moved to Memphis. From my understanding, my uncle at the time had moved to Memphis and was thriving, and he was enjoying it. So she decided to, you know, join him in Memphis. So that's what she did. And she took her, at the time, 4 children with her. I was the youngest, and she had 3 other children, which is my biological siblings. And so from that time, things, you know, from my knowledge, things were, you know, okay until they weren't. Because again, my mother was, she was definitely on drugs at the time, and she had no stability. Everybody that she knew was either in North Chicago or in Wisconsin. And my uncle was the pretty much the only person that she knew in Memphis, from my understanding. So things really got rocky, and my mother, you know, relapsed, started to use drugs. And from there, she, you know, would leave us home alone. My oldest sister at the time, I think she was 5 years old, was really the mother. That was a motherly figure that I had, because my mother wasn't there. She was in and out. Really don't have much recollection of my biological mom during that time, to be honest. It was more so of my 5-year-old sister and our, you know, and 3 other siblings that we had. And my mom just wasn't there. I don't know if she was working. I don't know if she was, you know, in the streets. I really don't know. But this was, you know, just unfortunate events that happened, and it led us into foster care, into the foster care system. This was my first time being in foster care. This was my first time really understanding what was happening. And it's crazy because I can still remember this stuff. It's crazy that when traumatic things happen to you, like, you don't forget them. Like, you may get a little fuzzy, but like those memories will stick with you. And these are memories that I had, shoot, 1-2 years old. Like, I can remember being a baby wrapped up in a blanket, heading inside of a store. That's crazy. Like, that was my earliest memory, just being a baby wrapped up in a blanket. Crazy, I know. But back to us being placed into foster care system. I remember very vividly, it was dark outside. I will remember like us having to go to an emergency home first, because I guess it was the weekend. I'm not sure if they had a housing for us, but we went to emergency housing first. It's like emergency foster care home, where children come throughout the night, or they come for the weekend. So we went to this home, and it was, I believe, all of us at the time, and we stayed in this home, and we stayed for a couple of days, because I remember just being in this home for a couple of days, sleeping there, waking up, taking a bath. But eventually they were able to find a home, and I was split up from my biological siblings, and we were put into I was put into a foster home. From my understanding, this foster home, I can remember, was pretty chill. Like, she was pretty chill. I was young, and what I can remember about her, she was a black woman. She worked as either a deputy jailer, or she worked at the ID place, because she wore a uniform. We used to go out of town a lot. We took trips a lot, and we went to church a lot. Like, we went to church a lot. It was like one of those like the time when, you know, you go out of town, you drive the bus all day, then you go to like 2 or 3 churches, you sing. And then sometimes on Sundays when we had church we would go to church all day, and then we would go home, eat, and then go back to church for either prayer and or choir rehearsal. Y'all remember all of this? Yes, ma'am, all of this. But I'm very so grateful for her, because she was such a sweet lady, such a kind soul. She really took great care of me. I don't remember any abuse. I don't remember anything. I just remember really, really good love. Like, that's what I remember. She took me on my very first trip to Disney. We took 2 trips. One was that I really remember. We took a lot of trips. We went out of town a lot, either for church or just, in my opinion, it was her self-care time, or just her time to get away from having a stressful job and just, you know, just unplugging. So we went out of town a lot. But 2 trips I remember were both Disney. We went to Disneyland, and then we went to a Disney cruise. Super cool, super chill. I remember going on this trip, and it was just phenomenal. So many things I've never seen before. But one reason why I really remember the Disney cruise is because I almost drowned. I almost drowned because I jumped into the deepest end of the swimming pool, and while I was, you know, jumping into the deepest end of the swimming pool, I almost got taken out. Thank God for a lovely couple that literally jumped in and saved me, because baby, y'all wouldn't have stopped me today. Y'all wouldn't have. I would have been down under. Thank God for his grace and his mercy that never left me, honey. Never left me. All right. So I definitely have great remembrance of this lady, this woman. I'm not sure of her name. I'm really not sure, but I believe I stayed with her about 1 to 2 years, somewhere in between there. This was my very first time remembering being placed in a foster care system. Okay, so that was pretty much my infant toddler stage. I really remember this woman, and even into like my preschool primary years, from ages 4 to 12. I remember her being somewhere in that stage, because she was the person, when I finally went back to my biological mother, I was in this home and we were granted custody. My mother was granted custody of us, and so when we went back with my mother, I was staying with her, but she went on to a trip, because y'all know she believed in adios. She was believing gots to go, gotta get my self-care. So during this time, she went on a trip, and I was staying with her mother, my foster mother's mother. And so I remember waking up. I remember her like getting me ready, putting her mom, my foster grandmother at the time, getting me ready before the social worker came, and she had all of my belongings. She gathered everything up. We had breakfast, and then she gathered everything up, and then my social worker came, and I had so many so many social workers at the time. It was crazy. Like, but one in particular, she came and she got all of my stuff, packed it up in her car, and I remember heading out until we got to this blue apartment building. We got to this blue apartment building, really not sure like what's going on. Again, like, I was young, no one really was talking to me, but I still remember this stuff, y'all. I still remember it. No one was really talking to me, telling me like, hey, this is going to happen. If they did, I don't remember it. No one was telling me like, hey, this is going to happen, you're going to go back to your mom. It was more so of like boom, boom, boom. Everything was happening so fast. So I remember pulling up to a blue apartment building. They were having a lot of people moving in. They were moving beds, they were moving clothes, furniture, just a lot of things going on. So I'm like, okay. So we get out of the car, and I go into this, this apartment, and I see my siblings, I see my mom, and I guess it was the social worker left, and I was like, all right, we're back. Let's get it. And so yeah, it was definitely something that I had to adjust to, because again, like, I was very much caught off guard. I was very much like, wasn't sure if this was like my forever home again, or was I going to be taken away again. So I was always on edge, always kind of like, looking over my shoulder, because I was a kid, and forcefully being removed from like your parents, from everything that you knew, you don't really just bounce back from that. So I can always remember, like, even after that, like, really not feeling safe, or like feeling like I could plant my roots back with my mom for some reason. We never really established a relationship that I can remember while we were living there, until like a few months or a few years later. It took it took everybody some time to adjust to each other. Everything was really going well. I feel like my mom was adjusting to womanhood and motherhood, because those are two different things. Womanhood and motherhood, those are separate. I consider them to be separate, but I feel like she was adjusting very well with having her children back. She had support, because of, again, like, when you have children in foster care and then you get custody back of them, they try to maintain some type of support system for you, whether it's like, the social worker comes, they visit, they're making sure if you need, food or anything like that, they're always there to support you and kind of like, help you through that journey, and kind of like, you know, just making sure everything is going well for a couple of months after you gain custody back. From my understanding, I don't know if that's still a thing, but that's pretty much what it was for us. So I think that's why it was a huge help for her, because she had that support. And from that support, I feel like she had an opportunity to thrive in some way. So I feel like she was doing really, really well in her womanhood journey, taking care of her kids, doing what she had to do, you know, supporting herself. And I remember during this time, I remember I was still young, so I would, you know, my sisters and my brother would have, you know, go to school, and I would be left with my mom during the day because I was young. It was like right before I started school, and this is probably like when I was about 4, maybe 4, 3 or 4, somewhere in that area. And at the time, we didn't have preschool. We did, but it wasn't for everybody. It was like, hey, like, only it was like daycare. Your parents had to pay for it. And, you know, my mama, she wasn't paying for it. So I stayed at home with her. And so with me staying at home with her, I was fortunate enough to spend some quality time with her. Our little girl time was going to the grocery store. And like when we go to the grocery store, it was just me and her, so I would always get a special treat. And so with me being able to get a special treat, I would come home, and well, we would go home, and my brother and my sister at the time, my 2 sisters and my older brother, would come home from school, and they'll put their bags down, and they'll, like, you know, have their snacks. And so one particular time this happened, me and my mother went to the grocery store, and we went to the grocery store. I was able to pick out a special snack, as I always did. For some reason, my brother got mad because I came home with a PB&J sandwich. You know those little Lunchables? It was like a PB&J sandwich. I don't know. But he was so upset that he didn't have one, that my mama didn't bring them one. And so he literally chased me around the entire house. And after so long, he clipped me from behind, basically tripped me from behind, and I fell face forward into a glass coffee table, and I have a scar. You can't really see it because I try to cover it up a little bit, but it's a scar. And y'all, I was bloody. I was gushing blood. Blood was everywhere, hooping and hollering. I had to go to the emergency room to get stitches. Y'all, it don't even stop there. So with me in the healing process, again, we were some bad kids. We were bad, but I feel like, you know, it was our home. It was love because we were all together and we had each other. So with it being that I literally had just bust my head open and I was in the healing process, me as I was the youngest, me and my older siblings were jumping on the bed, having fun, you know, just being kids. And so the bed at the time was in the middle of, like, the middle of the floor, in a sense. Like, it was up against the wall, but it was on the, like, it wasn't up against, the backboard was up against the wall, but at the same time it didn't have anything on the sides. So we were jumping in the bed, and all of a sudden the mattress started to slide off of the base. And so by it sliding off the base of the bed, you know how, like, the mattress hangs off of the bed? And so we were jumping, and so I was up against the headboard jumping on the mattress, and my brother had jumped on the edge of the bed where the mattress was had slid off. Y'all, at the time, I was a very small, petite little girl, very skinny, very frail. And when my brother jumped on one side of the bed, I literally went flying up into the air. The ceiling fan knocked my head, knocked the stitches out, again, bloody, gushing, everything. Back into the emergency room I went. This time my mom wasn't too happy because, y'all know, you better sit down somewhere, because who gonna be in the emergency room again? But we were back in the emergency room once again, where I had to get stitches back in my head. it literally tore me up. So my oldest brother terrorized me, y'all, terrorized me, and I literally have a scar to prove it. So yeah, that was fun times. I know it was horrible, dangerous, but it was fun times because we literally had each other, and those are memories that I'll forever cherish, because those were memories that I didn't get to experience living with my siblings down the road. So things were looking cool. Like, as a kid looking back, like, I didn't really see any hardships. I don't remember anything, but things were looking really, really well, and it was looking good for us until it wasn't. My mom had relapsed, and when she relapsed and got back onto drugs, it was different this time, y'all. Like, I know it was hard in the beginning, like, you know, as a kid, not really understanding or not just really knowing. But this time I was about 4 going on 5, something like 5 or 6. Yeah, so I think I was 5. And so with me, I'm like really starting to see and like really remember what was going on. Like, I remember like bits and pieces from my infant stage to my early toddler stage, but me being in this adolescent stage, like, I remember. I was about 5, and I remember going to school with dirty clothes. I remember having bug bites. I remember like being extremely hungry going to school. I remember walking around the neighborhood all around the neighborhood, all types of times of the day. I remember literally like going over my friend's house, not having no supervision, y'all, none whatsoever. Just really being out, like, walking around the neighborhood. It was, everybody knew us, everybody knew my mom, everybody knew our situation, everybody was like around the neighborhood was trying to take care of us and support us. And that is why I love community, because it was community who saved my life, like literally saved my life. It was people around our community who took care of us, really poured into us. I had my sister friends lived across the street. It was a big apartment complex, lived across the street, and so their mom would feed us, make sure we went to school. If they knew, you know, we were there at home alone, they'll try to come over and check on us. I had a neighbor, well, we had a neighbor who lived above us, and this was, you know, he would come over, he would check on us, he would literally like babysit from afar. But yeah, these conditions last a long time. We would go to school, they pretty like dirty clothes. I'm pretty sure they probably attempted to call DHS. A few times we had people come over to the house to ask questions, or, you know, just like pry and poke, until one day my upstairs neighbor could not take it anymore. I guess his conscience was just weighing very heavy on him, and he knew something was really, really wrong, or something would really happen to us if we continued to stay there by ourselves with not eating, not having food in the house, very like, you know, inhumane situations. It was like my mom wasn't there to clean up. At that time I had another youngest brother. He would use the restroom on himself, or use the restroom and like just didn't have any diapers. He would just use the restroom on the bare floor. And so these conditions last, I know, for like a year, until my upstairs neighbor called, you know, and filed a report. And from that point, we were back in foster care. And this time, I didn't have the opportunity to really stay with my siblings. Every time we went into foster care, I was split up. I was alone. I did not have any, you know, understanding that when I would see my siblings or when I would see my mom, it was more so of, you know, a waiting game. So I lived with my mom, my biological mom, for about 2 years before we went back into the foster care system. At the age of 6 is when I went back into the foster care system. And I was, what I can remember from this experience, just like the first, it was more so of like, we have to find a home. Being that I have a social work degree now, I know a lot more about the process. They want to keep the families together, but by us having a sibling group of 6 at the time, it was no way that they could find a placement for all 6 of us to stay together. So they broke us up. And so I remember going to, you know, the emergency homes again, trying to wait out, trying to find, you know, homes for us. And this, I probably had about 3 or 4 placements before being placed in my foster mother's home, where I would eventually be adopted. So during this time, y'all, this was an extremely hard time for me. About when I was around, I would say 6 to 10 years old, before being adopted, I saw a lot of children was being able to go back and forth from, like, you know, hey, they come into custody, they are coming in with their siblings. And this is living in the same house with me, you know, living literally in the same house with me in the next room. They would come in with their, you know, biological siblings. They'll come in, you know, together and get, you know, have the opportunity to stay together. But that wasn't my case. I wasn't able to stay with my family. I was snatched away from things that I knew, things that I love. So it was really, really hard for me during that time, because I didn't have roots. I didn't know, you know, what it felt like to live with your siblings and to be, you know, together. I was always apart from my siblings. So during this time, it was very hard on me to, one, have to be constantly reminded that this wasn't my home, that this wasn't, you know, if it wasn't for my foster mother and her daughter telling me that I could live there, I wouldn't be there. Like, this was things that my foster mother told me to my face. I experienced extreme abuse. I literally, from emotional abuse to physical abuse, like, like, looking back on it now as an adult, it was very wrong. But as I was a child living in it, I didn't think, you know, I just thought that was norm. I thought that, you know, that's what it was. That was the price that, you know, came with not living with your mother, like not living with your biological mother or your biological family. So I never really thought too much into the process. So I lived there. I put up with it. I didn't think that I had a voice or I had anyone that I could tell these things to. So I just really kept them bottled up inside. But I remember, like, being a kid, I would always say, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. Like, I always would. That was literally my whole entire, like, childhood, like, me saying those things to myself, and just constantly being, like, reminding myself that this too shall pass. This too shall pass. Nothing lasts forever. And so even when I would see children go home with their back to their parents, and I would literally, you know, when is my turn? When am I gonna go home with my family? Like, when am I gonna see my mother? Until one day we were on a visit, and they told us that we will have the opportunity to be reunited with our family, with our biological family, but not our mother. They got people in our family to basically help support us or help take us in. And at the time, I was super, super excited, because I'm like, oh my God, it's finally my turn. Like, I get to go home. I get to be reunited with my family. Oh my God, I'm up. Like, I was so excited as a kid to learn that it was finally my turn to be able to go and live with my biological family, and most importantly, my biological siblings. Like, I will be able to live with them. And so, of course, we would all have to be split up, but we would be split up amongst the family. And so the day came to where my family was supposed to come out, to a visit. And in this visit, we were supposed to meet them, we were supposed to hang out, and we didn't. They never showed up. The only person who showed was my uncle, who I love and adore today. Like, he showed up. He was the only person who showed up. And of course, having seven siblings at that time, it was no way possible that he could support all of us, because he, to be honest, could barely support himself. And so the court would not allow it. They was like, no, this would not be a suitable fit. So unfortunately, that fell through. I was devastated. I was crushed, because I'm like, wait a minute, like this was finally my chance. Like this was finally my opportunity to live with my people. What happened? What's going on? So during this time, I was really devastated. I didn't think that I would ever be able to live with my biological family, see my siblings again, or any of that, because it was the last straw. Like it was either now or never. And from that point, we were adopted. And some of my siblings were adopted, and some of my siblings stayed into the foster care system, eventually running away or just being forgotten about, honestly. So for me, I was adopted, and it was the same lady, my foster mother, who I was living with since I was about 6 years old, and I was adopted at 11 years old. During this time, it really got bad for me. Like really got bad for me, really hard. I can remember when Pastor Bree said, you know, identify who she was, her part of her story, and named what character she was. For me, during this time, this is when I became the act out kid. I became really like act out, like for attention that I wasn't getting. I was getting all negative attention, so I thought that by me getting that a negative attention, that I would keep getting attention, or eventually it would turn good, or eventually people would see through my hurt and ask like, are you okay? No one asked me was I okay. No one ever asked me why I was acting out, or what was the cause of me acting out. And it was because I felt alone. I felt literally hopeless. I felt like my back was against the wall. I felt like no one loved me. I felt like I didn't even love myself, to be honest. And I started to act out, and I started to want attention from things that didn't serve me or wasn't a part of who I was. I just made it a part of who I thought I was. And so during this time, I had to repeat the 3rd grade. Because my foster parent, well, my adopted mother at the time, didn't think that I was ready to, you know, move up. And honestly, it was the best thing for me, because I started to understand, you know, what my story meant, or where I was in my walk. So I met my 3rd grade teacher, Miss Palmer. I love this woman. She really saw through the hurt and the pain. Like I gave this woman so much trouble. I wanted to say something else, but I gave this lady so much trouble, y'all. I literally gave this woman so much trouble. But she was so patient and so sweet and so kind, and she really pulled things out of me, or really saw things in me that I didn't see in myself, to the point where I was able to achieve so much, you know, during this time. Like I began to really love school. I began to really take things in consideration about like, hey, I am smart, because she was the first person to call me smart. She was the first person to see that I was brilliant. I had something in me. Like I would finish my homework or finish my work first, and you know, begin to get, you know, antsy, or begin to do certain things for attention, because baby, I'm done with work. This what's next. And that was literally how I was in school. I would finish my work first. I was really smart. I was really like on top of my game. But my foster mother would feel like, or would say that I was dumb, I was stupid. She would say these things and not really encourage what I was, you know, what I had done. Like I would feel really down or really poor until I went to school. And when I went to school, I was able to see Miss Palmer. I was fortunate enough to have her in 3rd grade and 4th grade as a teacher. And then I was able to stay in after school program. And I would go with her during the after school program. I would go to her class. I would grade papers. I would help her write things on the board. But I saw like her. Like I literally saw her as a human. I didn't see her as somebody I idolized, but I just seen her as a human. I seen her not only pour into me, but I remember it was another young lady in my class at the time. And at the time I was like, no, like you don't do that. You do it only for me. not really knowing, like looking back now, I see like, oh my God, like that was a woman who poured into me, but not only me, she poured into other girls or boys in the class. And like I hear stories from my friends about how, you know, she did certain things for people that was less fortunate. And I just so grateful that I had the opportunity as a youth to have her as an inspiration, just somebody who I look up to even to this day. Like she was, that's a G. Like teachers matter, real good teachers matter. And like I know for me, Miss Palmer was that girl. Shout out to you, you did that, you did your thing. As I moved down to like the teenage adolescent years, this was some things that really was really hard for me, because again, I was the act out kid. Like I acted out, like I was fighting, I was, you know, looking for love in all the wrong places. And I remember leaving my middle school and going into high school. And me in high school, it was more so of like we all went to middle school together, and so we were all going to high school together, minus or adding minus a couple of new faces, but we were at the same school with everybody that high school that everybody that I went to middle school with, and it was lovely, honey. It was lovely. It was a security blanket for me. Everybody already knew me. Everybody already knew my story. So I didn't have to explain why I was wearing too little shoes, or like I didn't have to explain why. And this is when I was adopted. Like I remember very vividly, or I didn't have to explain why I wasn't. I was a popular kid, but I was, you know, wearing too big of clothes, or like wearing raggedy clothes, or not really like looking like the popular kid, because it was like we all went to school together. So we all had knowledge of each other. We all was friends in some way, shape, or form. And so everything carried over from middle school to high school. And so I remember my freshman year in high school, I was super nervous going into it, because it was like, oh my God, this is such a huge school. Like we heard so many stories, but everything was so good. Everything was fine until my foster mother wanted to take me out of that school to place me into a school where her biological daughter was going to, and I didn't want that. I didn't want to have to, one, be constantly, one thing that I hated the most in my foster, in my adopted family, was that I felt as though like I was always compared to her biological daughter, because I was the oldest by a couple of days. My birthday was March 31st and her birthday was April the 9th. And I feel like we were always put up against each other. We were always, or I felt as though like I was always having to compete, and I hated that. And when I was at my own school, I didn't have to compete. I didn't have to, you know, like I didn't have to be her shadow. I had my own identity. And so I wanted to keep my own identity, and I didn't want to go to the same school. So eventually I, you know, cooked up a master plan, and the act out kid became the act out kid, honey. She acted out. And during this time I got to fighting, and they kicked me out. They kicked me out of school, and I was thrilled. I was happy. I got what I wanted. I didn't have to live in her shadows, and I got to go back to the quote-unquote neighborhood school. So I wasn't fortunate enough to go back to my previous school with all of my friends, everybody who I knew, but I was fortunate enough to go to another school. At the time, my best friend was going to that school, so I knew a few people, but I didn't know a lot of people like I previously knew at my old school. So during this time, I was able to go to school with my best friend and a few of the people that I grew up with, just a few, because it wasn't too far from my neighborhood school. So during this time, like I was chilling, like I was having fun, like I was in advanced classes. I was really thriving. I felt like I was really thriving, and I got the opportunity to go, you know, do different activities. I was a basketball manager. I always poured myself into school, after school programs, you know, just extracurricular activities, just because I didn't have anything else to do. Like when I went home, I didn't have nothing to do. And so as I got older, I started to say like, if I do this, you know, I don't have to go home. and be, you know, talk down to, you know, called ugly or stupid or something like that. I literally didn't have to. So I stayed at school, and I would be the basketball manager. I opportunity to try out for the majorette team. I made it, and it was literally so much fun. Like, I had so much fun at this school, but I didn't have support, and so I would always get in trouble for being late, because my foster mother would always take me, or didn't really care, or didn't really, you know, think too highly of me being in these things. Like, yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, find a way, make it work. And for me, not really knowing, I'm like, that's poo, man. Like, that's horrible. Like, I want somebody to, you know, congratulate me, like, do these things for me, but I never got that. But when I went to school, like, I was a part of a community at my school. Like, I had my best friends. I had, like, you know, some people that I kind of, like, you know, made friends with and connected with, and I began to, you know, be popular and get popular in my new school. And so at my new school, I made the majorette team. I was, you know, dancing. I was thrilled, but I never had support at home. Like, never. I don't remember them ever coming to a parade I did. I don't know. I don't think that they've ever come to, like, a basketball game. Never. Like, ever. And so, it, you know, it definitely did something to my spirit. Like, I was super, like, self-conscious, or, like, I had no self-esteem, like, none whatsoever. And so when I, you know, started to date, in a sense, or sneak around with boys, it was, like, super out of my comfort zone. It was not, like, I knew I shouldn't have been doing certain things with boys, or sneaking around with certain boys, or saying, like, I'm gonna stay after school just to stay after school with a boy. It wasn't, like, super, like, bad, but it was, like, bad because I was lying about it. And I began to, like, really find safety in being promiscuous. Like, really, I was, because finally boys started to say that I was cute. Finally, boys, you know, for all the wrong reasons, started to like me. I started to see myself again. I started to see identity in what I was doing. It became very, like, you know, this is fun, to the point where I would skip school and I would go over my boyfriend's house, and just do different things that we knew we weren't supposed to be doing, to the point where the school would call my foster mom, and she started to kind of, like, you know, get upset with me, because if you're not at school, where you at? And she started to ask questions and, you know, pry and poke. And to the point where she was like, you know what, I'm done with this. You can literally go live with your biological mom. And at the time, I didn't know my biological mom. Like, I had seen my biological mom once at, like, we were at the HUD housing. And if you know, HUD is subsidized housing, Section 8. We lived in Section 8 housing when I was adopted. We on food stamps. Like, it was bad. So my mom lived across the street from HUD housing, so from Section 8. And so we were going or coming out of the HUD housing, and I saw my biological sister. And at the time, like, we looked identical alike. Like, me and my oldest sister looked very much so alike. So my my foster mother, adopted mother at the time, was like, that's Kiera, like, that's your sister. And I'm like, oh, like, you know, like, try not to get too excited, but I really wanted to see her. I was like, oh my God, like, my sister. And so she was like, oh my God, like, mama in the house. I'm like, in the house? Like, what? And so she came out, and y'all, like, she had this big old coat on. She was like, really, I think she was just getting off of drugs, still in the streets. And so, very much so, you know, rocked me as a kid to see, like, a person who I came from look like that, but at the same time have to go back home with someone who was saying, you just like your mama. Like, saying these things to me, when I knew in my heart I wasn't like my mom. I wasn't like my mom at all. And so just being, you know, told this stuff as a kid was really, really hurtful. To see, to watch, to hear, to, you know, to constantly be reminded that my mom didn't give a crap about me, and she signed, you know, over my rights and basically told them to tell us, you know, have a good life. And so, like, that hurted as a kid. Like, that really hurted as a kid. And to be face to face with her was very awkward and weird at first. And so when my biological, well, not my biological, but when my foster mother said that I could go stay with my biological mom, it was like crazy, because during that time I really didn't know her. She came to visit me once. During that time I went to stay with my sister Kiera, because I ran away. And so I ran away twice. And so with me running away, I went to my sister's. I went to my sister's house. I went all the time. And this particular time, I was able to run away to my older sister's house, and, you know, we talked, we, you know, did things, and she was like, I really can't take care of you, so you got to go back, you know, to your foster parent. Like, I can't, you know, I feel for you, I hate that you're going through this, but I can't take care of you. And so I went back. And during that time, like, I was able to reconnect with my biological mom. She was just getting off of drugs. And yeah, I was able to sleep on her couch. And it was bad. Like, during that time, I was a sophomore in high school, and during that time, it was really, really hard for me, because I was homeless. I didn't have a stable place. I was barely going to school. I was barely, you know, excited. I wasn't on a dance team anymore because I didn't have money to support myself. I was really homeless. Like, other than sleeping on, like, my sister's couch, my mom's couch, I didn't have a room. I didn't have anything. And so during that time, I didn't think that I was going to finish high school. I didn't think that I was going to finish really anything. I thought I was going to be a bum, because that's what everybody told me that I was going to be. I was literally going to be nothing. I was going to be pregnant. I was going to have all these things that I didn't want. And so, by the grace of God, my biological mother one day came over to my sister's house. We were staying there, and I was babysitting, because I was the living babysitter. And I was babysitting, and she said, do you want to go to Illinois with me to visit your grandfather? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. And so she was like, okay, go ahead and get up, get your clothes, and we're gonna leave after you get everything together. And so I'm like, okay. And so we got up and on the road, and we went to Illinois. And when we got to Illinois, we stayed with my cousin. At the time, I'm like really just first time meeting everybody. I'm super shy, like super nervous, because I don't know these people. Like, I don't know these people at all. And so I was able to meet everybody, you know, I was able to connect and grow. And I was really, really fortunate to have that. And so during that time, my mother asked, she was like, hey, we're gonna go to your grandfather's house. And when we got there, it's this huge mansion that I'm like, what is this? What is this? And so we walked in, and I'm thinking I'm just meeting them. So they, you know, give us a tour of the house. I'm thinking I'm just meeting them. I'm nothing to this. Like, okay, this is nice. All right. And so my uncle, my grandfather, had a son, and he was super, super young. He was younger than me at the time. And we were sitting down talking and chatting, and, you know, he was just talking to me, and I was just talking to him. And all of a sudden, my mom and my grandfather and his wife were sitting off to the side talking. And not knowing, my mom had asked my granddad if I could stay with him. And so she didn't ask me. She didn't really, like, you know, consider my opinion or my thoughts at the time. And so I'm like, what? I was really caught off guard, because my grandfather's wife came up to me, and she was like, do you want to live here? And I was like, like not trying to be shady, but like also not trying to hurt my mom's feelings, but really being put on the spot like that. I'm like, I don't know. And my mom was basically trying to get me to say yes, and I'm like, okay, yes. And so she was like, oh, we can really see that happening. We'll love to have you here. And she was asking me about my grades and stuff, and at the time I was not making good grades because I was not going to school, and my mom was fibbing and telling them like, oh, she makes really good grades, she likes to read. And at the time I did, but I had so much going on that I didn't think of school like that no more. Like, I really didn't. So came back to Memphis, we drove back, and quickly, really quickly, I had to get it together. Like, it was like I had to really buckle down. I had to go back to my my adopted mother and ask her for permission. Y'all, like, I was super nervous that she was gonna say no, and to my surprise, she said yes. She said yes. So she wrote out on a piece of paper, you know, to whom it may concern, you know, I'm turning over temporary custody for medical and school purposes only. Literally on a piece of paper, wrote it out, and went and got it notarized, and I was off on my way. I hadn't seen this woman. I didn't know like if she would say yes or no, but it was a gamble. I took a gamble, and by the grace of God, she said yes, and I was off to live with my grandfather in Illinois. And so I finished school in Illinois. Everything was awesome. Everything was great. I lived in Illinois for a year and a half before I graduated. And when I graduated, I was like, I want to go to college. Not really understanding, not knowing, no one in my family who went to college, but I knew I wanted to go to college. So guess what? I went to college. But it was a struggle, y'all. It was such a struggle for two reasons. One of the reasons, I had went back to Memphis on a lot of empty promises from family and friends that said they're like, hey, we're gonna help, like, you get a job and we're gonna do this. And then all of a sudden, when it was time to help me get a job, no one helped. During that summer of me graduating high school, I had so many hiccups, so many bumps in the road, but by the grace of God, I finished the summer strong, and I was able to get all of my supplies for college by the grace of God. He sent an angel, honey. One of my previous social workers, who I literally call mom to this day, with one phone call, got everything taken care of for me. So I didn't have to worry about going to college with nothing. I literally had everything that I needed for college, y'all, by the grace of God. Thank you, Lord. But y'all, I still had hardship. Like, I still had a huge hurdle to get over once I was actually at college. Like, I went to I went to Miles College my freshman year, and by the grace of God, I was not afforded, but I was able to actually get my tuition covered by myself, because as you guys know, if you go out to college, your parent at the time have to sign either a Parents Plus loan, or you have to get your parents to sign your FAFSA. And at the time, by me being adopted, I had to actually go back and ask my foster mother, or my adopted mother, for her permission to sign my loans, because yeah. And she wasn't having it. She told me, I don't give a if you go to college or not. That's not my responsibility. Get somebody else to do it. And I was devastated, actually, because it was like, my education is being denied. One thing that I want to do, I can't do. Here we go again. So yeah, I was back really feeling defeated. But by the grace of God, he was like, you're not leaving. You're not leaving. I sat in that financial aid office, and I got it taken care of. And I showed him all the paperwork. I showed him every single thing that wasn't my parent anymore. And so by the grace of God, I was able to sign off on all of my loans, all of my FAFSA, and I was able to graduate college. yes, I went after finishing my freshman year. I transitioned and went to a community college where I got my associate's degree before heading to the University of Mississippi, where I finished and got my bachelor's degree. So I ended up with 2 college degrees, y'all. So God is amazing. And I'll just wrap it up. At this season of my life, y'all, God has been showing out. After graduating college, I've been out of college for about 5 years now. And it was a rocky start, like graduating college and really not being sure of what I wanted to do. So I did a lot of, you know, jobs. I worked, my degree was in social work, so I did a lot of jobs that I wasn't happy, didn't fulfill me. And so I ended up working at Chick-fil-A, and I'll just finish here. I ended up working at Chick-fil-A, and while I was working at Chick-fil-A, I started off as a part-time employee. And as a part-time employee, I quickly moved up, and I ended up leaving Chick-fil-A, but coming back as a full-time employee because something didn't work out that I wanted to. So I was like, let me go back to Chick-fil-A because I always have a position at Chick-fil-A. And so when I went back, I went back as a full-time employee, and everybody was like, why are you working at Chick-fil-A? Like, what is going on? But God had bigger plans for me, y'all. He had bigger plans. By the grace of God, yet again, I was able to get the opportunity to move to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to develop and open up a new location in Oklahoma. And I opened up the store. I was able to move and travel with Chick-fil-A, and I loved it. But after a year, I decided that that wasn't for me, and that I wanted to actually step out and do my own thing, in which I created an organization by the name of Melanin Vibes. And this has been a journey. It has been such a great experience, developing my skills, doing the things that I love. And by the grace of God, y'all, your girl ain't wanting for nothing. I went from literally working and being financially supported and stable to literally not having an income and solely depending on my skills. And at the time, my current boyfriend allowed me to utilize my gifts and do the things that I love, and with his support, with God, with my family, I was able to really develop something in Tulsa, a name for myself. I was able to do so many things by the grace of God. So I'm gonna wrap up here and say, y'all, God has been working in this season. I have had so many great opportunities, and God is still working. He's still literally using me and like pulling me through a lot, and I'm just so grateful for all things that he's doing, not only for me but for like so many people around me. Y'all, I have my vision board here, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, whoa. I'm gonna show y'all. This vision board is lit. I started at the beginning of this year just with a prayer board, a vision board, and y'all, I'm literally checking off stuff. So I'm gonna show y'all this in the next clip, the vision board. And yeah, I know this was a long video, but I'm so happy that you guys stayed and watched, because y'all the real MVPs. Yes, y'all are. But with much love, I'm out. Peace. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my new YouTube channel. And this has been your homegirl Shay, and I am out. Peace. A vision board starting out, okay? And y'all, yes, some stuff has been checked off. This was my prayer board. Yes, I started at the beginning of the year with the 21-day fast, and I just was writing stuff on it. So that was my prayer board, and this was my new you 5-year board. And y'all, by the grace of God, your girl is engaged, okay? Your girl is healthy, okay? Your girl is a great giver, very much so steward of what God has given me. I have rested this season, and I know the vital importance of balancing emotional stability, okay? Date nights, yes. So yes.